Well, here I am again. Imagine that. You know, I don't understand it, right? But since I started my, new YouTube channel, the Jeff Indite channel, there have been a lot of people, right, that have been looking at my drum videos, which is really cool. But not too many people, right, have been coming up, right, on my commentaries. But, you know, I still have a lot of ideas in my head. Stories that I like to tell, experiences that I think, a lot of you guys will find interesting and entertaining. I want to dedicate this next little story. Oh, by the way, right, for those of you that are wondering why I'm bouncing up and down, I'm on a horse. Not really. I'll never forget it, right? I was on a horse, right, when I was a little boy. I was petrified. And when I was in Boy Scouts, right, I remember, right, Camp Wawapex. Wow, that was really cool. Lee Lessem, Jimmy Kent, Dominic Kent. I think Dominic, right, passed away. He was really cool. Jimmy Kent was really cool. Lee Lessem. I'll never forget it, right? Brian, I forgot what his last name is. We went to high school together. Some of the guys in my Boy Scouts were in high school, were in school with me, elementary school. I mean, I grew up with these guys. Brian, I forgot what his last name was. He was a pretty, strong guy. Glad to right in the daylights out of me. I used to chew gum, and I got some gum. Somehow, I don't know how it happened, right, but I spit it out or something, and it went in his shoe, because we were sharing, right, it was like outside, right, we slept outside in these, I think they were called the trains, or maybe that was where you went to the bathroom, but anyway, and he was very unhappy, right, that I got gum right in his shoe, because he put the shoe on, and obviously, right, when he put it on, he got it all over his foot. I thought that was a funny story, but that's actually not the story that I wanted to tell you. What I wanted to tell you was I want to dedicate this story to the late great Mr. Jim Chapin. I never had the pleasure to study with Jim Chapin, but I did work right out of his Blue Book, and I remember right attempting to use it to teach. It was like the classic Jazz Independence book. I forget the title, but it's a Blue Book, and it's really, you're right, probably one of the best comprehensive books on, playing the ride and then being able to do different figures between the left hand and the bass drum in a jazz idiom. Really hard book. In fact, right, it's probably one of the classics. I mean, it goes up there, right, with probably, the top 50 drum books of all time, in my opinion. But in any event, never had the chance to study with him, but I've seen him a lot of times at all the different drum clinics that I used to go to when he was alive. And he was a really colorful guy, He was always he always had his Ralph Pace practice pad. I think it was a Ralph Pace practice pad. It was that Real Feel pad. By the way, if any of you guys have those Ralph Pace pads, I would die, to have one of those if you want to donate it to me. Maybe you're right, we can exchange. I've got some really, really good DVDs, Buddy Rich DVDs. If I told you where I got them from, never mind, It's unbelievable. A buddy of mine, is a collector. So I've got films, that you guys would never, would see. So maybe we can make a trade. Either that, or maybe a Real Feel pad. But anyway, let me get back to the story. So, I've seen Jim a lot of times. I remember one time, I was on the way, to, I forget what clinic it was. It was a Law Drum Center clinic, and it was all the way out past Massapequa. And I remember, it was in high school. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew where it was. And I'm on the road, and a guy pulls up to me on the right, and he goes, do you know where, I forget what the high school was. That high school is. And it was Jim Chapin. He was in this small little compact car, and And I said to him, "Hey, Mr. Chapin, all right, follow me. I'm going there right now." So I guess he followed me there, and that was the first conversation I had with her. Second conversation I had with her was a tremendous experience for me personally. I was studying with Ronnie Gould at Nassau Community College, and I was at another drum clinic. I think it was darn. It might have been the Bill Bruford Clinic, maybe. One of the things, Mr. Chapin always went to the clinic, and he always had his practice pad with him. So, the guy was just an avid practicer. I mean, he would practice on it. He would show people different things. And I had a figure. It was in the Delacruz book. For those of you that don't know, the Delacruz book, it was written by I think it was a German composer named Delacruz. The exercises are in this book. I have it in storage somewhere. I've got to get it out. Either that or get another copy of it, because the compositions in that book are probably the most difficult but hippest drum exercises that I've ever seen. They didn't quite fall right into the rudimental feel of Chas Wilcoxon or any of those guys. It had more of a Cyrone feel. He wrote another book, Impressions of Stravinsky, I believe. But these things were unbelievably difficult. They were rudimental, but they were really, really very, very complex from time to point of views. Unbelievable. From what Mr. Gould told me, I believe the book is required reading at Juilliard. So, we're talking about snare stuff that is unbelievably challenging. And I had to I only mastered one composition out of that book. It was, I think, one of the first three solos. I forget which one it was. It was my jury. I had to do it for when I studied at Nassau Community College. At the end of the semester, you had to play a jury. It was like kind of NISMA, but this was on college level. And I'll remember Mr. Shipe, who was one of the judges, Mr. Gould, of course, the late great Mr. Gould, and I think that was it. It was usually those two guys. And Mr. Shipe, Professor Shipe, actually. By the way, if you're listening out there, Mr. Shipe, I hope you're doing well. I know he's probably retired already. He was my music theory teacher and my keyboard teacher. He was very, very encouraging. I studied with him both times. When I went to very early in my life, and then when I went 20 years later. So I had the pleasure to study with him twice. But he's, as a professor, I imagine, he was a really, really good reader in terms of drum reading. Because he was, he was the other juror. So, it was missed. So in any event, but let me get back to the Jim Chapin story, if I may. So there was this one figure in the book. It was a 5 grouping. There were 16th notes where there was one figure where I don't remember exactly. They were it was in 2/4 time, and there was one figure where there were apparent 16ths. It might have been I don't really remember the exact figure, but it might have been or maybe maybe with a drag of or maybe I really don't remember the figure. But after that, within the structure of this solo, by the way, it started off in 6, so it changed a lot. The meters were unbelievable. But there was this one grouping. It was a 5 grouping. It had 5 written on top of it, and the way that you had to play it, I've done it in a couple of sequences. It's really difficult. It's 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, but it has to fit into the 2/4 meter. So, but in any event, I was really having trouble with the figure. One of these days, I'll YouTube it for you guys, and I'll show you how it sounds, because it's pretty hip. There's also one in 7. But in any event, I was really struggling with this figure, and Mr. Chapin happened to be there, and so I went over to him, I said, Mr. Chapin, I happened to have the transcript with me. I figured I'd bring it with me because I had a funny feeling right that if I asked Mr. Chapin, he would really be very happy to answer my question. I wasn't sure. I mean, he could have said, well, you know, I'm a little busy now, or, you know, you could set up a lesson with me, I'll help you, but no, that's just goes to show, right, the authenticity of Jim Chapin's philosophy as an instructor, a drum philanthropist, so to speak. So anyway, he goes, come on over here off to the side, and we went, he sort of took me off to the side, and we sat down and on one of the chairs, and he took out his practice pad, and he proceeded to give me, I don't know, maybe it was like a 5-minute lesson on the concept. You know, he sort of talked about it, he played it a little bit, explained it to me, showed me a couple of other ways that it could be done with triplets. He gave me like a mini lesson. It was, you know, if I could have filmed that, it would have been a great thing to share with you guys. But you know, back in those days, we didn't have, we didn't have films. We didn't have film capacity. But I'll never forget that, you know. And so when I went back to Gould, because I hadn't had Gould explain it to me yet, because he had just given it to me. And so when I went back to Gould, I had a pretty good conception of it. And Gould, I don't know if he was impressed or not impressed, but pretty good. So, and that's the story, you know. Chapin always, I mean, the fact that he took the time to explain this to me, I mean, he didn't know me from a hole in the wall, he didn't know who I was pretty touching, you know. And one other time, I remember, I didn't get to meet him, but I waved at him. Jerry Beakey from the Long Island Drum Center, at one time, he had Al Miller teaching at the school, Charlie Perry teaching at the school, and I believe Jim Chapin. I'm not positive, but I think. And I'll never forget, I think it was a day that Liberty DeVito was around. You know, wow, that was really cool meeting him. Didn't really talk to him too much, but Jerry was showing me around. And there in 3 different cubicles, is like Al Miller giving a lesson. There were soundproof cubicles, and then Charlie was in another room, and I think Jim was in another room, and I just said, wow, what a sight. And that was like really, really cool. And yeah, that was, so in any event, that's the story, you know. And it just kind of goes to show, that if you're really authentic, you know, as an educator or drum philanthropist or in any capacity, and you know, you give that back to the public. And you know, he could have just said to me, well, you know, a lot of instructors would probably say, yeah, you know, here's my number, you can set up a lesson with me, you know, and I can explain it. He was just the opposite. He gave me a lesson right there. He didn't want anything from it. But I always remember that, you know, there's some things right in your life you always remember, and it's pretty good. And the last thing, I think that I went on that jury, it was one of the juries that I did, because I did quite a few of them in my tenure at Nassau Community College, the second time I went. But I remember I got an A, and I had never gotten an A. I don't know if it was on that Delacruz solo, but it might have been. One last little thing about a reference to Mr. Gould. I remember whenever the juries maybe this is another story, but whenever the juries were completed, they would post the grades on the drum department door. Well, actually, the drum room door. The drum room was like this soundproof room. It was really strange. You know, when you close the door, your ears almost kind of popped. It was a soundproof enclosure. I think it was made out of bulletproof glass or something. I don't know. Glad nobody ever took a shot at us. Yeah, just kidding. So anyway, so I remember looking at one jury result of that, and I got like a B+. And there was another guy that had gotten an A. And the guy that got the A was much less advanced than me. In fact, he was more just a beginner drummer, which is really cool, you know. I mean, he wasn't, I knew this, right, because he was in the drum ensemble, and he was kind of struggling with some of the parts. So everybody, right, was really encouraging to him and tried to help. But and then I noticed, right, he got an A, you know, on his jury. His jury, right, was probably easier than mine because he was more of a beginner intermediate drummer, and I was more advanced. So I went to Mr. Gould and I said, hey, you know, now what is this, right? You gave him a B, you gave him an A, but I got a B plus, and my thing, right, was a lot harder, right, than his. I knew it was because I knew, right, the kind of level that he was on. And you know what Gould told me? And I'll never forget it, and it made a lot of sense. He said, well, you know, on his level, he deserved an A. In other words, in according to what his ability was and how he performed, he deserved that A. You got a B plus, right, because you deserved the B plus. You didn't, you know, in other words, I didn't have the thing 100% perfect. When you do your jury, right, you know, you're standing up there, you know, it's like you're standing there, you go in, you know. I told the guys a couple of jokes maybe to kind of relax them, so they give me a good grade. But, you know, you're there, you know, and it's very nerve-wracking, you know, and so I don't think I ever played a jury 100% perfect. And that's why I got the B plus. So I'll never forget that, yeah, you know, I had to work hard. And the last thing, I only got an A on a jury only one time in my history of juries at Nassau Community College. It was deserved. I remember it was around Christmas time that Mr. Gould said, happy holiday. And I think he even told me, right, along with Mr. Shepherd, you got an A. And it was really cool. It was like a big moment. Never got another A. You know, usually, right, I would get B pluses. I don't think I ever got a C. I usually did a really good job on those things. When you did the jury, you were given the sheet that you would decide upon at the beginning of the semester, or maybe a couple of weeks into the semester. Semesters were usually about 3 months, so I had a good 3 months of it to really work on it. So you better believe, right, I worked on it a lot, you know, every day, constantly drilling it. I mean, I almost had it to the point where it was memorized. So, I know I went on a little bit, but anyway, a tribute to Mr. Gould, tribute to Professor Shipe, and then also, too, a tremendous tribute to the late, great Mr. Jim Chapin, who, you know, oh, by the way, you can see films of him. He gave Don Famularo studied with Mr. Chapin. I never did. I'm sorry I never studied with him because Mr. Chapin taught the Moeller technique, which I had claimed the right that I knew, but I didn't really know it. I thought I knew it, but I have like a bit of it in my technique, but it's a very specific technique. And he taught that technique, and so all his students, right, who have gone after him have that technique, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of like a whooping sort of motion, and usually guys who like to play with the Moeller technique usually have really, really good technique. Combine that with the Gladstone technique, which is the way I play a little more, though I never studied with Mr. Gladstone. Okay, so that's really cool. It's cool. I'm cool. Give me a pack of cool. Just kidding. Actually, I quit smoking quite a few years ago. If you're smoking, don't smoke. That's another story. Anyway, I went 19 minutes. I hope you guys find this useful. And thank you. Peace.